we're going to move to the final panel, which will look at the social safety net. And the question we will be trying to answer with our two panelists is, are the social safety net up to the task, especially in response to the first two panels that we had that painted a picture that is not the rosiest. So we better get ready. And on this panel, we have Stephen Shafarman. Stephen is an independent researcher and activist on universal basic income as a key to achieving true democracy. He published his first book about these themes in 1989, quite a while ago, while enrolled in a doctoral program on human development. He is a life member of the Basic Income Earth Network and presented at their conferences in Geneva in 2002, Dublin in 2008, and Montreal in Canada in 2014. His next book, Individuals First, to Achieve the Future That We Want, will be published in the spring of 2026.
As Ibrahim mentioned in my introduction, I stumbled across the idea of universal basic income back in the mid-90s. And at the time, I was working on doing research in the way young children learn to crawl and to walk and to make sense of the world. And my focus has always been on seeking to understand this process that I call organic learning, a term from my mentor, Moshe Feldenkrais. And I stumbled across the analogy of the body politic. And if society is like a body, then it seemed to me we might collectively outgrow pollution, racism, crime, and war by following processes through which young children outgrow crawling as they learn to walk. Playing with those ideas, the immediate thought was, well, young children learn when their basic needs are being met by their parents. And so perhaps the key is to ensure that everyone, as adults, can meet our basic needs with some type of guaranteed income. One of my faculty advisors in the doctoral program had been a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter in the White House. And he and other faculty pointed me to the library and said, this is a PhD program. Stop playing mental games and get yourself to the library. When I began to learn about Thomas Paine and agrarian justice and Henry George and the history of guaranteed income ideas in the 1960s. So my focus has always been on how do we build a mass movement to promote these ideas? How can we engage regular citizens, most of whom are turned off or turned away from politics, to be active citizens, to demand the human reforms that are so necessary? And the debate about guaranteed income and basic income, when it first reemerged in the early 1960s from liberals and conservatives, focused even then on ideas that robotics and computers were going to take our jobs. And when Andrew Yang was promoting the idea of a basic income during his presidential campaign, also talked about jobs. In fact, that was his primary concern. Well, in the more recent literature about basic income, starting in the mid-1980s, we've been moving away from the focus on jobs and talking much more about basic human dignity. And that's really my focus. And I don't want to say that people must have jobs. I want to say that people must be unique individuals with the dignity to work or not work, to be full-time parents or full-time poets or scholars or activists, whatever is most meaningful to us. And there's a lot of psychological literature suggesting that, in fact, humans naturally are social beings, are ecological beings, and we want to make a real contribution to the world around us. Again, I started with looking at how young children naturally move and learn, and I just see something in the chat from Scott Baker. And yes, animals do too. Humans are animals fundamentally. Humans are animals who have learned to talk, and too often we get caught up in words and lose the immediate experience of what we're doing as human beings, as human animals. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the idea that if everyone has a basic income, some will refuse jobs, but those who refuse jobs will find something else to do that's meaningful. And so the way I'm now, and I've written a few books and I've been working on these ideas for quite a long time, going back to the late 90s. My focus is hooking into the idea of the Declaration of Independence. Again, how do we build a mass movement for human dignity? And next year, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It will be a huge topic in the news. Liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans, and folks who are just generally anti-politics or turned off to politics, all subscribe to that core idea that all people are created equal with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I'm arguing and writing a new book on this, that the only way to realize that is to ensure that everyone has at least a basic income for necessities. As a political strategist, it seems to me that it's best to not be too focused on the details at first. So I'm saying it might be $500 a month. It might be $1,000 a month. There have been over 160 pilot projects around the United States. There have been pilot projects in Canada and in many other countries. And most of them have been $500 a month. A few have been as much as $1,000 here in the US. It would be a smaller amount elsewhere. And all the research shows that people use the money responsibly. Some of those programs have been targeted to poor single parents, welfare recipients, and again, all the research shows that people use the money responsibly. So I'm working on a new book about this and have been arguing from the start, from the book I published in 1998, that the most sensible way to fund a basic income is with something like an expanded land value tax. And that is whatever people take from nature or from society or from future generations ought to be paid for. So Thomas Paine, back in 1793, called it a ground rent. Henry George had his ideas and his language. And I'm saying that on issues of climate change specifically, today it's politically impossible to have a successful argument for higher fossil fuel taxes. Well, if we start with the basic income, and I'm now using the term citizen dividends. I actually used that term in 1998, and I'm now emphasizing it even more strongly. If we start with citizen dividends, if we give everyone $500 or $600 or $800 or $1,000 a month as individuals, then I'm certain we can have thoughtful conversations about how to pay for it. And I think it will be relatively easy to argue that, yes, fossil fuel taxes, yes, land value taxes, yes, shifting property taxes off of buildings and onto land. Yes, taxes on timber and salmon and minerals and whatever people take from nature. And with these arguments, seeking to close the feedback loops so that with taxes on takings, and with a basic income to redistribute those revenues, we are giving people monthly reminders that we as individuals are all citizens with a direct stake in creating a more just and sustainable world. And I can be happy to go into more detail, and sorry that my camera doesn't seem to be working effectively, or my internet is unstable today. It might be from the very hot weather here in Washington, D.C., because it's usually fine. And so I just want to point back to Tom Rossman's arguments that we are at a tipping point. We are approaching a crisis where AI, because the tech bros are competing against each other to be the first trillionaire, we need to be vigorous in promoting the interests of Team Human and ensuring that the visions of Henry George and Thomas Paine and others among the pioneers in our movement, that these visions are alive and well and finally achievable, and that we do in fact achieve them.